Dear students, a very good morning to you. I am Mrs. Snail Sudhir Mori and today we are going to learn Chapter 1. What, where, how and when. Part 2nd. Part 1st we have already revised in the last session. Let's quickly summarize it. Finding out what happened in the past. In the last session, we have already discussed what will we do if you want to learn what happened in the past. We will listen to the radio, watch television, read a newspaper or ask it to somebody who remembers it. What can we know about the past? We can find out about the lives of hunters, herders, farmers, rulers, merchants, priests, craftspersons, artists, magicians, scientists, etc. Where did people live in ancient times? In the last session, we have already discussed that people preferred living on the banks of rivers so that it was easy for them to gather food. And names of the land. Where did the name of our country, that is India and Bharat, emerged? These all were the topics which we discussed in the last session. Now let's begin with our next session, part 2nd. Let's start with finding out about the past. There are several ways of finding out about the past. One is to search for and read books that were written long ago. These are called manuscripts. These are called manuscripts because they were written by hand. This comes from the Latin word manu, meaning hand. These were usually written on palm leaves or on a specially prepared bark of a tree known as birch, which grows in the Himalayas. Now these manuscripts were written by hand, and the word manuscript is derived from the Latin word manu means hand, and a script written by hand is a manuscript. Now where are these manuscripts written? They were written on the leaves, palm leaves, or on a bark of a tree known as birch, which is grown in the Himalayas. Now in those times there were no papers to write, so people preferred writing on the palm leaves. Now observe the given picture. These kind of manuscripts were written in those times. Let's study about them. Over the years, many manuscripts were eaten away by insects. Some were destroyed, but many have survived, often preserved in temples and monasteries. These books dealt with all kinds of subject, religious belief and practices, the lives of kings, medicine, science, etc. Besides, there were epics, poems and plays. Many of these were written in Sanskrit, others were in Prakrit. Prakrit was the language used by ordinary people. And also manuscripts were written in Tamil. Now manuscripts we can find several manuscripts. Where are they? They are preserved in temples and monasteries. Now what is written on these manuscripts? The lives of kings, the knowledge of medicine, science, not only that but also our ancient Indian literature, that are epics, poems, plays are all written on the manuscripts. Now these manuscripts were written in Sanskrit and Prakrit language. Sanskrit language was known to few people, those who were knowledgeable, those who were able to read and write Sanskrit. Only they can write in Sanskrit. Others were using Prakrit language. Prakrit language was a common language which was used by ordinary people, and also manuscripts were written in Tamil. Now let's learn about inscriptions. Observe the picture below and let's learn about them. These are writings on relatively hard surface such as stone or metal. Now in the last slide we have learnt about manuscripts. These are writings which was written by hand on palm leaf. Now inscriptions are the writings which was done on hard surface such as stones or metals. Sometimes kings got their orders inscribed so that people could see, read and follow them. There are other kinds of inscriptions as well, where men and women including kings and queens are recorded what they did. For example, king often kept records of the victories in battle. See children, for example, today also we can find the inscriptions of Emperor Ashoka. A King Ashoka's emperor, today also we can, after thousands of years also, we can learn what he did in that time. This was the reason the kings in those times used to inscribe on the hard metal, because it can be preserved for longer time, and so that even today the people can learn about the glories in their time, or the victories which they. Now, who are archaeologists? Very important. Archaeologists. There were many things that were made and used in the past. Those who study these objects are called archaeologists. Now, there are many things we can get from we can get manuscripts, we can get inscriptions. The scholars, the historians, those who study the sources of history are archaeologists. Now, let's study about them. They study the remains of buildings, buildings made of stone, brick, paintings and sculptures. They also explore and excavate. Excavate means what? Dig under the surface of the earth to find tools, weapons, pots, pans, ornaments and coins. Some of these objects may be made up of stones, others of bone, bit clay or metal. Objects that were made up of hard imperishable substances usually survive for a long time. Hard imperishable substance means what? The substance which can survive for a longer time, which cannot be easily destroyed. So archaeologists, they will explore and they will excavate under the ground, and they can get many of the substances, many of the objects which were used in the past times. They will study it, and this study is done by a archaeologist, and they are called archaeologists. Now let's learn about the things which we can get from the past. Observe the given picture. A pot from an old city. Pot like this were used about 4700 years ago. Imagine children, this pot was used about 4700 years ago. We can, from where can we get this pot? Now we cannot go in that time and bring this pot. This pot was excavated and got under the ground. See, and also you can observe the coins. The old silver coins such as this were used about 2500 years ago. Today in the modern world, nobody will make such kind of coins, but these kind of coins were used about 2500 years ago, and the study of these kind of objects is done by an archaeologist to find the history or to find the past events. Next, historians, that is scholars who study the past, often use the word source to refer to the information found from manuscripts, inscriptions and archaeology. Once sources are found, learning about the past becomes an adventure as we reconstruct bit by bit. So historians and archaeologists are like detectives who use all these sources like clues to find about our past. So very important, dear children, historians are just like an detectives, means whatever they get from the excavation, whatever they find from the past, whatever they explore from, on that basis, on that knowledge, they will try to learn what happened in the past. So they are just like a detectives. Now next, one past or many. This title itself is a bit confusing. How can past be many? Yes, it can be. Let's study how. We have used the word past in plural to draw attention to the fact that the past was different from different groups of people. For example, the lives of herders or farmers were different from those of the kings and queens. The lives of merchants was different from those of the craftsmen, and so on. As also true even today, people follow different practices and customs in different parts of the country. For example, today most people living in Andaman Island get their own food by fishing, hunting and collecting forest produce. By contrast, most people living in cities depend on others for supplies of food. Differences such as these existed in the past as well. See, dear children, a very beautiful example of Andaman Island is given here. Today also, the people living on Andaman Island, how do they gather their food? By fishing, hunting, collecting forest produce, etc. But how do we gather our food? By going to a market or to a shopkeeper, right? So even in present situation, the lives of people in Andaman and the lives of our people in the cities are different. So in the past time also, the lives of kings and queens were different from those of the lives of farmers, merchants or the common people. So there are different pasts. The past of king is different from those of the past of farmers, merchants or the commoners. Okay. Now, on this basis we can say there are many past. Besides, there are another kind of difference. Now, what kind of difference? Let's see. We know a great deal about kings and the battles were fought because they kept record of their victories. Generally, ordinary people such as hunters, fishing flocks, gatherers, farmers or herders did not keep record of what they did. While archaeology helps us to find out about their life, there is much that remains unknown, very, very important. In those times, kings used to inscribe on the stones or metals, which we have already studied. Whatever they did, they used to inscribe or they will write on a manuscript. But what about the common people? The life of common people such as hunters, fishing flocks, gatherers, farmers, herders, it's not kept anywhere in written record. So these people never wrote what they did in their past life. So how can we find about them? So archaeology helps to find out. The people who study archaeology, they will excavate the things from the past and they will try to learn about the past history. Now let's see the next topic. What do dates mean? What do dates mean? A very important topic. If somebody asks you the date, you will probably mention the day, month and a year 2000 or something. Okay, children, if I ask you what is today's date, you will say it's 2nd July 2020. Now, where this year 2020 came from? Let's study it. This year was counted from the date generally assigned to the birth of Jesus Christ, the founder of Christianity. Very, very important. The word Jesus Christ was born 2020 years before from now. So this year was counted from the date generally assigned to the birth of Jesus Christ, the founder of Christianity. See now, dear children, so 2020 means 2020 years after the birth of Christ. After the birth of Christ. Pay attention, dear children. All the dates before the birth of Christ are counted backwards. Now, what about the dates before the birth of Christ? They are counted backwards, means they are written as BC, that is before Christ. Okay. Now, and the dates after the birth of Christ are written as AD. Okay. So, I hope, my dear children, you have understood the lesson, you have enjoyed watching the video. Now, let's move towards the homework. Explain the difference between AD and BC. Now only we have learned about AD and BC. You will explain the difference in your own words. Next, who are the archaeologists and what do they study? In this session, we have learnt about the archaeologists, who are they and what do they study. I hope you have understood the lesson and thank you very much for listening to me. Have a nice day.